Time for a little Ask JP. Question for today comes in from Barris Harvey from Santa Cruz, California. He says, JP, what are your 3 favorite books? And I just kind of proved to you guys that I can read because I read his question. So I'd be happy to share with you a few of my favorite books. But first, I will also be honest, I don't like to read. I've actually found that it works against my education, present day. Just a quick little backstory. I used to read all the time. I mean, I would never go anywhere without a book. I never had a bowel movement without a book. I was pretty much a self-proclaimed reading addict. I was trying to use reading to validate I'm smart, I know what I'm doing. Then I found for me, the more I was reading, the smarter I was getting, but the less wise I was getting. So I found that I had to really divorce myself from constant reading. And I've been divorced from constant reading for probably 3 or 4 years now, and anymore I probably read somewhere between 2 and 4 books a year. And it sounds like an incredibly shallow education, but I found for me, the more I started to not read, the more in touch with my own opinions, wisdom, beliefs, intuition, and imagination I became. So for me, the downfall of reading too much past your point of balance. What is your point of balance? I think only you can determine it. I was lucky enough to figure out my point of balance after I went way over it and stayed way over it for way too long. So back to what I was saying, the shadow side of reading too much would be we're discounting our view of life in order to sort of drink in what the author of such and such book says. So I'd ask you to, before I share my favorite books with you, please consider an empowering way to read. For me, one of the empowering ways to read is we pick up a book and we take the book as opinion, not fact, and we look at the author as our equal. That's a seduction because a lot of times, we look at author. In fact, you look at the word author and authority. It comes from the same root word. So we look at authors as authoritative figures. And here I am, I'm a mere mortal. I've never written a book. The author has. They know what they're doing. I don't. They know the truth of the subject matter. I don't. Very disempowering way to read. So I would invite you to consider that's how not to read. How to read. The author is a human being. They are as delusional as I am. They've had the courage to put their delusional opinion out in the form of a book. Some authors are so delusional they'll call their opinions facts. But if we look at the author as an equal human being, I'm here showing up, dear author, to read through your opinion. My mission is to agree with some of it, disagree with other parts of it, but more so be curious about what comes up in me as I'm reading your opinions. So anymore, when I'm reading my couple books a year, the reason why I'm reading it is to use the author's opinion as a mere reference point. What do I think about that? So I'll read the author's words. What are my thoughts about that? What are my feelings about that? What sort of creative inspiration comes up in me? Maybe about the subject matter, maybe something completely different. So the book in front of you, please consider that as your secondary reading while you're reading. Your primary reading, what if you consider that to be your thoughts, your feelings that come up? I'll read with my peripheral vision down here, but I'll read with my soul attention with what goes on up here and what goes on in here and what comes through me here. So would it be okay to consider that as a possible empowering way to read. Otherwise, we can make ourselves smarter and smarter and paradoxically less and less wise. Wisdom coming from your life experience, your opinions, you test driving your opinions, you getting your feet dirty, you falling off the horse of your opinions, you screwing up, but that's your life wisdom. Any author opinions, perhaps secondary. So with that said, dear authors of how you perceive the books you're reading, some of my favorite books. Actually, I'll share with you first The Dark Side of the Inner Child by Stephen Walensky. For me, absolutely a powerful book. It takes a look at our inner child, more specifically, you would never guess it, the dark side of our inner child. So what's the wounding that goes on in our symbolic inner child? What happened in our childhoods? I almost said childrenhoods. So let's go with that. Let's author a new word right here. What happened in our childrenhoods that created pain, that made us frozen, and therefore, because we're frozen, we're still acting out the same expressions of pain, mimicking the overwhelming life experience we went through that got us frozen in the first place. So taking a look at the dark side of the inner child. And Stephen Walensky, rather than Monica Lewinsky, does a wonderful job at that. Read you a quick note. This isn't authored by Stephen Walensky. This was authored by paying attention to my thoughts that come up as I was reading the book. It's actually, briefly, I love highlighting the crap out of books, making notes, writing in the books with my own thoughts. Oftentimes I'll cross off what the author says and write in the truth as I understand it in this very moment. Then I pick up a book a couple years later, look at what I wrote, and I'm like, wow, I disagree with that. So let me cross off what I wrote, where I crossed off what the author said, and write it according to me today. But anyway, a thought that came up for me about this powerful book: we hold the energy of a memory in place by resisting the memory. That's why we must recover and feel memories that have been numbed out. Less resistance equals less persistence of the pain that binds us. Dark Side of the Inner Child, Stephen Walensky. Man, I am really stuck on this whole Monica Lewinsky thing. Have you guys heard about it? Apparently her and President Clinton had a little thing. Stephen Walensky. Next favorite book. This is actually probably my top favorite. It's called The Impersonal Life. It was written in the early 1900s. Small little book. Best way I could describe this, it's a very spiritual book, whereas the first book, it's much more of a humanistic, heart, mind, psychological book, if you will. This is absolutely about our spiritual nature. In a way to describe this, if you combined the power of now and conversations with God and injected them with steroids, you'd have the impersonal life. Up until recently, this was published without the author's name. The author's name is actually Joseph Benner. And until he died, he refused to allow his name to be attached to the book because he says, from his point of view, he channeled the book. He said, I didn't write it. I was the hand that recorded the book. But he said the book wasn't by me. I'm not willing to take credit for it. If nothing else, it makes a great story. Maybe true, maybe false, or maybe somewhere in the middle. So if you choose to read The Impersonal Life, you may experience it to be a very uplifting book in terms of how not to live your life through the lens of your ego. I would also say, for myself and other people who I've talked to have read this book, we always walk away from it and our ego says, if that's true, what the hell is the point of life? the best books of a spiritual nature, for me, are the ones where the ego has to get defended and say, if that's true, there's no purpose to life. For me, when we live our life from more of a spiritual, soulful point of view, the purpose of the life, according to the ego, gets diminished. Yet the purpose of the life, of our life, according to our soul, our spirit, gets volumized. So perhaps this book will be more than challenging for your ego. It was for mine. And my ego says, according to that book, I have no control over anything in life. All I can do is sit here and observe what happens. Yes, dear ego, that's what the book says. It's okay you feel out of control. It's okay that you want to control everything. It's okay that you don't have control over anything. And it's okay that your denial about that is essentially the only thing that you can control. P.S. Even that comes from the mind of God. You're not even in control of that. Apparently my ego's captured by my left knee today. Next book, Bradshaw on the Family, written by John Bradshaw. Do you think he named it after himself? Tells you a little something about his ego. It's a wonderful book. Please don't judge this book by its cover. It's an absolutely horrendous cover. Haha. Bradshaw on the Family, actually anything by John Bradshaw is phenomenal. This particular book, Bradshaw on the Family, for me, it is a foundation that I, in my own delusional, controlling way, wish every single human being would have a chance to read. What John, like I know the guy, what John shares with us in his book is how, as a child and adult actually, our experience of this web, this interconnected web that we're born into called our family, how it dramatically influences us, both for the functional and both for the dysfunctional as well. How he talks about how what's going on in various family members, though it may seemingly have nothing to do with us, and though we may not logically know about what's going on, because we are an interconnected web, we're like different parts of the same circulatory system in the family, we are absolutely influenced by everything that happens in our family. Our experience of our family, according to John, more so according to me, I mean, this is my opinion about his opinion, our experience of the family, that's the knife that sculpts the marble of our own self. So we take a look at how we are shaped today, and by shaped meaning how we do things that disempower us, how we do things that work for us as well. The shapes, the contours, the jagged edges, the graceful lines, all of that that comprise the sculpture of who I am today. What happened in my family to shape me this way? Something I want to make sure I add on to what John writes. It's not so much what happens in our family, it's how we perceive, logically, emotionally, intuitively, what happens in our family. So when you and I are doing just goofy things today, like sabotaging ourselves, our question to ask ourselves is not, what's wrong with me? It's to ask ourselves, what happened to me? When we can go back and identify what happened to us, it begins the channel of compassionate light to ourselves where we can actually reshape our sculpture of ourself today. We never change what happened to us in our family, yet we can grow beyond it. And as you're getting the hint, these three wonderful books, to me, they're absolutely empowering. These three books are obviously tailored to your self-growth, your healing, your spiritual, and your psychological nature. So if you choose to check out those books, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on them. And also, I'd love to hear what your favorite books are in the realm of healing, self-growth, and spirituality. Please feel free to comment. Leave me your thoughts below, what your favorite books are. Last invitation is the reminder, please make sure you're reading for you in an empowering way, a way that helps you connect with yourself rather than self-medicating through reading and disconnecting from yourself. With that said, thank you for joining me today. Barris, thank you very much for your question, my friend. I love it. I have a great time sharing with you guys. Also, please feel free anytime, send me your questions. The best way to do that is on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Inner Awakenings Online. I'll look forward to catching your questions there. And also make sure you click the subscribe button that's probably not to the right of your screen, maybe upper left. That's right. Anyway, you'll find it. You'll stay up to date on all the Ask JP questions and other videos I do. Thank you all. Talk to you next time.